Hi everyone, welcome to episode 276 of A Stitch in Time. I'm Carol, also known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry, and I live east of Vancouver in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada. As I record, it is late Friday morning, January 26, 2024, but you will not be seeing this until a later date. This episode is going to be a little bit of a mishmash. I'm intending on recording several different segments over the next few days and editing them all together. And so I apologize in advance. There'll be a little bit of a lack of continuity this time around. I hope you're all doing well and that you've had a good 3+ weeks since we last spoke. I've just come home from a fabulous adventure. My husband and I arrived home late Monday afternoon from South America. We were on a working holiday for my husband's company, serving as hosts for a cruise for his company's customers from Buenos Aires, Argentina to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And I cannot wait to tell you all about it. I will be recording a recap complete with pictures and videos, and I will put that at the end of this episode. So if you're not interested in that part, no worries. It will be easy for you to skip past it. I have not yet taken a good look at all of my pictures, and so I'm looking forward to kind of reliving our experiences as I go through those in preparation for that recap. I brought home a couple of unwanted souvenirs from South America. The first was an insect bite on my ankle, which I reacted to, and as a result my ankle and foot were quite swollen and uncomfortable. In a way, it's not surprising. I do tend to get reactions to insect bites, even mosquito bites sometimes, but thankfully it did not get infected, and my foot's just about back to its normal size. The other, you may hear it in my voice, I picked up a cold while we were gone. There were a couple of different types of bugs going around the ship, and I don't mean insects this time. One was a stomach bug and the other was a cold. Thankfully I did not get the stomach bug, even though it would have sort of been over and done with more quickly. Would have caused me to miss out on some things. So even though my cold has been lingering a little bit, I was still able to enjoy all of our activities. But yeah, there were quite a few of us coughing on the way home. The recycled air definitely did not help that. So right now I'm kind of at the phlegmy stage of my cold, so I will try and keep the throat clearing and sniffles to a minimum. But I am actually feeling quite good now. I was thinking this morning that it's almost unbelievable that we went from summer in Brazil to winter in Vancouver in just a matter of hours. I was thinking it's kind of like time travel. There could not have been a greater contrast to our surroundings and our weather. And I think it's just pretty remarkable. Sometimes we take it for granted, but this would have been unthinkable, a century and a half ago. We had very hot, humid weather while we were away, and we left at just the perfect time, as it turned out. We'd had a bit of snow before we flew out, but I think we left Wednesday, I think it was the 10th, and it was just overcast and actually fairly mild. But then within a day or two, this region experienced like Arctic outflow winds, sub-zero temperatures, and then a few days later had significant snowfall. So we definitely missed the worst of the winter weather while we were gone. Having said that, was really strange because we left Rio in rain. We flew in and out of Houston in the rain, and then we flew into Vancouver in the rain. So we did have rain the whole way home, which helped, kind of ease the transition a little bit. There is still a little bit of snow lying around, and it was truly sweater weather yesterday. I wore my Sean by Elizabeth Doherty all day yesterday, and I thought I would put it on again today to show you. Since I've been sitting down to record, I'm starting to feel a little more warm in this. The sun is coming out actually after being overcast for quite a while this morning. But I'll see if I can manage to keep it on throughout this portion of the episode. I knit this last year out of a couple of colors of Rowan Felted Tweed. I don't remember the details, but they are on my Ravelry project page, so I'll provide a link to that. I think I'll just stand up and give you a quick look at this sweater, which I love. I love how it fits. I love how it feels. It's not itchy at all, and I'm just super happy to have a chance to wear it. A lot of times our winter weather is quite mild, and it's usually too warm for sweaters, so it's kind of a treat to get to wear one, legit. Sometimes I put it on to record an episode, but don't necessarily wear the whole day. But yeah, like I said, I wore this one all day yesterday. So this is all slipped stitch color work, so it's not difficult. It's carried over onto the cuff. And then the bottom is finished with a little bit of ribbing and a little bit of red for the bind off also. So there you have it. As you can see, it's a circular yoked sweater. The neckline's slightly wider than I would like, but I did go down and I think to the next smallest size for the neckline, so it would be a little bit narrower. Could probably stand, just maybe bring it in another 1/2 inch, but other than that, I'm really happy with it. All right, since I've been home, I spent the first day, or I guess the first day and a little bit unpacking and doing the mountains of laundry. But since then, I've had quite a bit of time to knit, kind of settle back into home, done some knitting, and caught up on some podcasts and other YouTube things I like to watch. And as a result, I have a finished project to share with you today, in addition to a couple of new works in progress and also a couple that you have seen before. And I had a very nice surprise waiting for me when I got home, so I will also have a small acquisition section. Before we get into all that, though, just a reminder that there are a couple of make-alongs taking place in the Ravelry group, new for 2024. The first is Smash the Stash, which really is just a kind of repeat of the year of the stash and another year of stash from 2022 and 2023. We just started over, and I really enjoyed catching up on that once I got home and seeing all of the wonderful things that you're making from your stash so far this year. And then the other is Sweater Weather, the first of 4 quarterly make-alongs, which will be taking place this year in the A Stitch in Time podcast Ravelry group. I can't believe it. There are already several finished projects and plenty of works in progress. So I also enjoyed catching up on that thread. Just a gentle reminder to please carefully read the guidelines and rules in the first post in the chatter thread. I'm going to be a little bit lenient to begin with, but I'd really like to see a start post in the chatter thread and a finishing post in the FO thread, which includes the number of the starting post from the chatter thread for each of your projects. It just makes it much easier for me to verify that you have cast on or begun your sweater less than 50% done in the appropriate time frame. And if I know your post number, then I can go right there and then go from there to your project page and just check everything all out. It's not that I don't trust people, but I also want some sort of accountability on your part, and I'm just trying to make it as fair as possible for all the participants. And so for now, if you haven't followed that, I'm going to overlook it, but within a week or so, I'm going to get a little more strict about it. And if I end up with a finished project in the finished projects thread that doesn't follow those guidelines, I'm sorry, but I'm going to delete it. So just be forewarned. I don't want to be a jerk about it, but I also just want to try and make it as fair as possible for everyone. So hopefully you understand that. If you are wanting more relaxed make along, then the year or the Smash the Stash is for you because it's much more relaxed. Speaking of sweater weather, before I show you my finished project, which happens to be a sweater, I wanted to share this with you. This is a Christmas card that we received from our son and daughter-in-law, and I meant to show it last episode. I don't know if you can read that, but it says, "I made this. No, you can't return it." I just thought that was awesome. I believe our daughter-in-law got it from a fellow teacher from school who hand makes these cards. But of course she knew it would be perfect for me, and I want to find somewhere to put it up here in the craft room because it's definitely a keeper. So yes, I finished a sweater. I finished my Killer Queen pullover by Mary Annarella of Lyrical Knits. And I would love to show it to you like right here, right now, only it is downstairs blocking and is still way too wet to put on. And so I am going to record a little segment when it's dry and insert it here. So enjoy that, and I'll be right back with you with works in progress. Fast forward to Monday morning, and here is my Killer Queen pullover all blocked and dried. Why don't I give you a little bit of a spin and then I'll talk about it. So there it is from the front and the side and the back. So once again, this is a pattern by Mary Annarella of Lyrical Knits, and it came out last summer. And as soon as I saw it, I knew I wanted to make it. It calls for worsted weight, and so initially I thought I would use these leftovers from my shift shawl and my weekender. Right here I have, I think, 7 different colorways of Cascade 220 Superwash Wave. So I went down to my local yarn shop and I bought some Cascade 220 Superwash in color 880 Marionberry, and that's this dark purple here. So then I started swatching, but I ended up having a couple of concerns. One is that I wouldn't have enough yarn, which as it turned out, I would have. I used just under 200 grams of the contrast color for this sweater, and I had almost 250 grams of leftovers. But more importantly, I was worried that I didn't have enough of each colorway to make the patterning on the sweater match the patterning on the sleeves. And as you can see, all of these patterns line up throughout the sweater. So I went to my stash, and there I found a sweater's quantity of Cascade 220 Superwash Effects, which is a discontinued line, in color 10 Lightning Storm, and I swatched with that and was really happy with the outcome. I feel like there's enough contrast that you can see the patterning on the main color background of the Marionberry, but there's also enough difference in the yarn that it provides some interest. And one thing I didn't have to worry about was running out of yarn because I had a whole sweater's quantities worth. So I'm very pleased with that decision. I like how the two yarns work together. So I knit the second size, which is 36 inch, or 36 inches. It's supposed to give a finished bust circumference of 36 inches. I haven't measured it, but I would guess that it's pretty close to that. My bust tends to run between 36 and 37 inches. And so essentially what I have is a zero ease sweater, which is what I often choose for my sizing. What's different about this sweater is it doesn't have any waist shaping. It's knit straight from the underarm to the bottom edge. And so there is a little bit of extra fabric here, but not so much that I feel like it looks super oversized. Normally I do like to include some waist shaping because I have a fairly straight torso and I like to at least create the illusion of a waist whenever I can. But as I say, I think it's close fitting enough that it's not, you know, super unflattering or anything. Another thing that was different for me is that the sleeve is knit without shaping from the underarm to the cuff. And then you decrease fairly rapidly and then do some one-by-one ribbing. And again, not something I've done, but I don't feel like the sleeves are overly voluminous or anything, and it's certainly a technique I would consider in the future. Other than that, I think I knit this more or less as written, except I added a little bit of length to the cuffs and the bottom band. And when I say a little bit, I mean like 2 or 3 rows. I used an alternating cable cast on for the neckline. It's knit from the top down. It's, as you can see, a circular yoke sweater. I find that's a really nice cast on for a 1x1 rib because it looks a lot like a tubular cast on without all the hassle. And then for the first time I did, I think it was called the Invisible ribbed bind off. I can't remember exactly, but I will put a link to it in the show notes. I followed a tutorial on YouTube and it looks basically, and I think it might even be just another version of a tubular bind off because you're basically just doing Kitchener stitch around the bottom of your cuff and bottom band. And again, I think it looks really nice with the 1x1 ribbed. So very happy with the finishing touches on the sweater also. So why don't I come a little bit closer and I can show you the stitch detail a little bit better. So this is all done with slipped stitches, so there's no stranded color work involved at all, so it's quite simple. This is Tiny Bubbles. This is the Bigger Bubbles pattern, and then this one is called Champagne Flutes. So with all of those different stitch patterns, there's always something new going on, and it was quite fun to knit this up. I'm not quite sure why it took me all the way since summer. Definitely it could have been finished more quickly, but I just had other things that came up and became a priority. But I am really happy to have my first sweater of 2024 all finished. And I'm looking forward to working on my other sweater works in progress. So there you have it, the Killer Queen Pullover by Mary Annarella of Lyrical Knits. I would highly recommend it. I ended up taking 3 or technically 4 projects with me on our trip, but I only ended up working on 2 of them. I thought that my Blanket of Cheer and Scrappy Advent socks would make the perfect travel projects, which they are, but I didn't end up working on them at all until I came home. So though they are technically two different projects, I've been working on them concurrently lately, and so I think of them as one big project. So to refresh your memory, the blanket of cheer is a miter square blanket that I began last January, and it is knit entirely from Fiber Knit Dyeworks yarn. So the majority of the semi-solid squares have been or are going to be knit from the 2022 Holiday Countdown collection, The Art of Contrast. Some of these squares I'm using either full mini skeins or leftovers from other mini skeins, and they are all in the Bounce base, which is an 80/20 superwash merino nylon base. The self-striping squares are mostly knit from leftovers of either Bounce, Mountain Tweed, or Bedazzled self-striping colorways. The Bedazzled is a metallic one. In most cases I'm using leftovers, but in some cases I am winding off some yarn from new skeins and using it to complete squares. And then the border is knit from undyed plain vanilla Bounce. So I decided that beginning in January that I was going to methodically work my way through the previous year's Holiday Countdown collection. And so I started with color 1 from day 1, and I just started knitting plain mitered squares. And at the same time, I cast on a pair of toe up stripy, scrappy socks. And as I finished the 4 squares that I could get out of one mini skein, then I would knit the leftovers into a pair of scrappy socks. So that's, in case you're new, that's the blanket of cheer and the explanation behind it. So since I last showed these projects to you, I have knit several, I think 4 more colorways. I know this one's my latest one. I finished that last night, so I have 4 squares knit from that. I can't remember all the rest of the ones, but here's my bag. It's getting more and more full all the time. In some cases, I had already knit 2 or more mitered squares out of the mini, in which case I just have to either knit 2 more or just knit the leftovers into my socks. So I am now on color 20, so I'm getting very close. So 20 was a full skein, and then this is the beginnings then of, my first mitered square from this color. And then just try and tuck everything back away so I don't have a huge mess when I'm done. So in here, my ugly Christmas sweater bag, I have my scrappy socks. And so here, whoops, the needles are so twisted around each other. Okay, here's what they look like now. So last time I showed them to you, I had finished this color, so I've now put 4 more colors in, and I am working right now, as I said, on color 20. So I am knitting these from the toe up. This that I'm using for the toes and heels and part of the cuffs is color 10. So I did include a stripe in the sock, and as I've mentioned before, it occurred at exactly the right time. I was able to insert the heel right in the middle of that colorway. So love how these are working up. They're just fun and bright, and they're almost done. So within hopefully maybe a week or two, I should have these finished, and then I'll be able to start adding some stripy yarns into my blanket again. So I still have, I don't know what order, I think this is color 24, that's a full skein. I did ball them all up before I went. That one I've already knit 2 squares out of, so I just have 2 more to do out of there. And then I just have a couple of leftovers now that need to go in. So I think that's would be color 21 and 20. No, I don't know. I think this is color 23 and 22 and 23. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I've got 4 more waiting for me in this bag. So close to finishing those socks and all the semi-solid mitered squares. So super excited about that. I can't remember if I have any other, I do think I still have some semi-solids that I'm going to want to make some squares out of, but I think once this is done, I will just start using self-striping and start joining those semi-solid. Sorry, I feel very rusty this week, as you can imagine, after not recording for a few weeks, so I feel like I'm blabbering on a little and tripping over my words, so please excuse that. I decided I wanted a pair of plain vanilla socks for the trip, and so I cast on quite a new yarn. This is also from Fiber Nymph Dye Works. It's one of Lisa's pie colorways. This is from the Middle Earth Imagined collection, and it's Second Breakfast Pie. And I had I had a mini out of the Bedazzled base, which even though it doesn't match exactly, I thought would look good for heels, maybe toes. And so I will show you what I've done so far, and then tell you the different stripes, the names of the different stripes. So here's what I've got so far. Got the heel and gusset done. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Fiber Nymph Dye Works pie colorways, Lisa dyes them using a formula based on the number pi. So if you look at the second stripe, think of that as 1 unit. And so, for instance, the first 3 numbers in pi are 3.14. So the 3 is 3 times as long as the 1 section. And then this next section, which is 4, is 4 times as long as the 1 section. And it just continues that way through the whole skein. So it is never repeating, just like pi is never repeating. And in some cases, there's a 0 in the pi sequence. And if that's the case, then that color gets skipped. So maybe if pink was supposed to come after here, if the number was 0, it would skip the pink and go straight to the next color. So it's just a really fun way. If you can, I tend to like my socks matchy-matchy, but when they are deliberately fraternal, then I can handle it. So anyway, the colorways in here. So it's Second Breakfast Pie, which is a reference to The Hobbit. So we have Raspberry Scone Pink. The next one's harder to see, so I'll scooch on down to here. There. That one is Nice Crispy Sausage Brown. That one is Fresh Berries, which is a variegated colorway. This is Seedy Bread Tan, and then Butter and Honey Gold. So these are similar, but not the same. So those are super fun to knit. You never know what's coming up next or how long that section's going to be. And I did a traditional heel flap and gusset. I like how that looks. It's my usual top down 64 stitch sock. So I started these before we left, and I worked on them in the car on the way to the airport. I worked on them a little bit while we were on our cruise, and then the last day we didn't fly out until 10 o'clock that night, and so the company arranged like a tour for everyone who had a late flight. And so as we drove around on the bus, I worked a lot on these, even finishing the heel, and then I was working on the rest of the gusset and got to about there on my way home from the airport. So lots of good memories knit into this pair of socks so far. And then I took another pair of socks also. So as I mentioned, probably in my, I think in my last episode, most likely, maybe even in another, I'm doing a personal sock yarn club again this year. And in fact, sitting beside me here in this bin, I have 11 paper bags with sock yarn in them, numbered, or I guess actually this year I did them by month. So there's February waiting for me right there. So I wanted to get going on January's sock, and I didn't even bother putting it into paper bags. I already knew which one I was going to do for January, and it is the Sweater Weather colorway from Polka Dot Creek. And it is their classic sock. I'm just digging for the label here. This is what the main skein looks like. It is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. And I bought the sock set. So in addition to this main skein, I got 2 complementary colors. Oops, this one's definitely falling apart. This is Spice, and this is Spruce. So you can see how nicely they go together. So I couldn't decide whether to do just a plain vanilla sock or to do something with a pattern. And I kept thinking that with a name like Sweater Weather, I should do a patterned sock, and it should have cables in it. Just what I pictured. And so I went on Ravelry and started looking, and I actually found this pattern, if you can believe it, called Sweater Weather. It's knit in a variegated with complementary heels and toes, and it has cable that goes up the back and little ones that go down the front, which I just realized I believe I missed. I just realized I didn't do this cable. I only did them here. Oh well. Design feature, right? The pattern is by Tabitha Gandy, and it says an awesome sock design by Tabitha Gandy. So sorry, it is just a black and white photo, but this is what they're supposed to look like. Yeah, I made an error. Oh well. Oh no, I didn't. No, I didn't. I didn't. I did them right. Okay, forget that. Here's mine so far. Discombobulated. Anyway, I decided that I was only going to use the Spruce colorway as the complementary heel and toe, and I decided to do it for the cuff also. So there's a 1x1 cuff. And this is 68 stitches. I did a little bit bigger than normal because the cabling does draw in the sock. I also substituted a traditional heel flap and gusset for the short row heel, or actually I think this one calls for an afterthought heel, which I did not want to do. So I did a traditional heel flap and gusset. But here's the back, and I will put it on a sock blocker in a second so you can see that stretched out. And yes, I did do the cabling on the back. It was just the way it looked on the pattern. I thought I'd missed it. And then little 1x1 cables that just run down the entire front and instep of the sock. And I will be doing a complimentary toe. And if for some reason I don't have enough of the spruce colorway from this set, I have another mini skein in another set, which I will have to dig through my bags and find, because I can't remember what month it's in. I have an idea, but I think I'm going to have enough anyway to I think I'm going to be fine. So anyway, I'm going to slip this on a sock blocker just so you can see. Center it here. So that's how it looks from the side. First time I've looked at it this way, so I really like it. And then I'll turn this around so you can see the cable on the back all stretched out. It's a little bit tricky with the sock foot being so long, but there. There you go. Isn't that nice? And it's not complicated. These take place every 2 rows. And then this is, I won't give it away, but just, it's a, I can't remember how long the chart is. It's quite a long chart. 24 row chart, but only twice in that chart do you have to do these big cable crosses. So it's very simple. So this kept me occupied on the plane on the way there, and I worked on it on and off over the cruise. And I started the heel, I think, before I left the cruise ship, and then picked it up again when I got home. So what I like is that now that I'm on the foot, it's just this 2 row repeat, which is easy to know which row you're on, and been enjoying those. So a little bit of interest for this first Personal Sock Yarn Club sock, but I also have a plain vanilla sock on the go, so that you know, it's an easy project to pick up anytime. So loving that. And I've got this in this bag, which I just think goes really nicely with the colors in this fabric. This is one that I made. Okay, up and coming. Now that I've finished my Killer Queen, I can turn my attention to my other 2 sweaters that are on the needles. So I am really looking forward to getting back to these. I don't have tons and tons of details like when I started them and stuff, but this is Owen by Jennifer Wood of Woodhouse Knits. I am making it from Estelle Yarns Eco Tweed Worsted. And this, I don't know if it has a color name. It's just red. And the code is 042406. So I don't know if you can tell, but it has little specks of yellow and blue and red in there. I've wanted to knit the sweater for so long, and I began this back in the summertime. I do remember that. I think I did. I bought this yarn for this at the same time as I bought the yarn for the Killer Queen pullover, and I began them around the same time. And so I have got this much done on the front, that much on the sleeves, and that much on the back cable pattern. There are lots of charts. You have to pay attention, especially when you're doing the raglan increases and the front increases, and you know, this is not a just sit and knit away kind of project at all, but I am looking forward to working on this when I have the time and attention to give it. And then when I am prepared for a little more easy knitting, I have the Coffee Break by Josée Paquin, which I call tea break on my Ravelry project page, because I don't really drink coffee very often. So I'm just trying to snap this thing up properly and get it out of the way. So I have that project in this beautiful bag that I made. Love the sunflowers. So I saw this sweater as a shop sample in Beehive Wool Shop in Victoria this fall, and wanted to cast it on. So this is what it looks like. And I am making it out of 2 colorways of Lannis Light by Barocco, which is 100% wool. It says it's a special blend of South American wools made in Peru. I was so hoping while we were in South America that I would find a skein of yarn somewhere that I could buy as a souvenir, but I did not. So maybe this, I'll think of this as my South American souvenir. So I chose that color, which is 78126. I think it has a name, but it's not on the label. And then just the white, which is color, oh, this one's called Cayenne. That's this label. I did write it on a label. So where's the other label? I think it's something to do with snow or frost or something. 7800 Snow Day. That's this one. Okay, so I have gotten this far. So I've split for the body, and I just begun the single row stripes. So I've got 3 of those done. However, I'm not happy with the, I think it's on this side, I'm not super happy with the transition and how I'm doing the single row stripes. So what I'm going to do is take it back to where you split for the body and sleeves, and then I'm going to pick up an extra stitch, or cast on an extra stitch, I guess, under each arm, and I'm going to do it as a purl all the way down each side, and that way the transition between rounds with these single row stripes will be much less noticeable. So it's only what, 2 inches of rib or of knitting to pick back. Once I do that, I'll get back on that. So 2 great sweaters to be working on over the next couple of months. So I'm really hoping that I can finish both these sweaters by the end of March and by the end of the sweater weather make along. I may or may not, doesn't really matter. But that is my hope, and that way I will have completed all 3 of my sweater works in progress, and then feel like I can cast on another sweater later in the year. So we'll see how that goes. I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself. All right, that brings me to acquisitions. So when I got home, there was a lovely Christmas card from a knitting friend. I love cardinals. Such a pretty card. And then inside were this beautiful progress keeper and these stitch stoppers for your end of your needles. And I don't know if you can tell, they're in the shape of socks. Let's see. can't show them to you very well. There we That didn't work, did it? There we go. I am looking forward to using these. Now that I've shown them to you, I will put them to good use. I often end up, I don't usually use needle stoppers on my sock projects, but I often end up pulling them out of the bag and pulling some stitches off the needles. So these are going to go on one of my sock projects. And I think I'm going to start using this one sometimes with my mitered square blanket, because I always mark the center stitches in my mitered square. So I'm going to put this one into the rotation. I have several that I just keep going through because they're all so pretty. So thank you again. You know who you are. It was such a lovely surprise to come home to. All right, that brings us to what's been going on in my life. So I am not really gonna say too much more than I already did, I think, at the beginning. So yeah, I've been away. Now I'm home, enjoying being home again and settling back into regular life. And if you're interested in what I got up to on our trip, then stay tuned till the end of the episode and I will tell you all about it. A couple of administrative notes. So I am going to, on my next regular episode, announce the final Yarn of the Month Club winners, because the December Yarn of the Month Club knit along will be, or make along will be over by then. So watch for that next episode if you participated in the December Yarn of the Month Club. I am hoping to resume sock season next weekend. So that would be the first weekend in February. And I will be showing you some Cookie A socks. I think I have enough to show them on the first 2 weeks. And after that, I haven't decided yet what the themes will be. But yes, if I have time this coming week, that is the plan. And then I'm also going to continue with my bi-weekly schedule for regular episodes. I'm finding that works really well for me, especially since I'm doing the additional recordings with sock season. And so for the foreseeable future, I'm going to continue to record regular episodes bi-weekly instead of weekly as I used to do. And so, finally, before I show you highlights from our trip, I have something good. And my something good is kind of a combination of two things. I did not sleep well on this trip at all. First off, neither my husband nor I tend to sleep very well on planes, and neither of us slept very well on the way down. And then we had lots of late nights. We had some early mornings with excursions that we were going on, and he slept pretty well on the ship. I only had one really good night's sleep, and other than that, I would just lie there and I would not sleep. So when we got home, we got in, we dropped our stuff. We'd had terrible plane food on the way home. We ended up between our 2 flights having like 2 breakfasts, and neither were very good. So we were hungry when we got home. So we got home, unloaded our stuff, went out to a restaurant, had an early dinner, and came home and just chilled for the evening. And it was my aim to stay up till 10 o'clock so that I would try and sort of overcome jet lag as easily as possible. Well, I did not make it that late. I ended up going to bed at 8:30, but I climbed into our own comfy bed with these wonderful flannelette sheets that we bought this winter at Costco. And I had the best night's sleep I'd had in a couple of weeks. I woke up early the next morning, completely refreshed. My Fitbit gave me a 90 sleep score, which is unheard of for me. So my something good is flannelette sheets and sleeping in my own bed. I've had every night this week, I've had a good sleep. Not 90 sleep score good, but in the 80s. And so, yeah, that's my something good. have not really suffered from jet lag at all. I've gone to bed a little earlier each night. We both have than we normally do, but I've had good sleep. So, yeah, that's my something good. So, if you are not going to stick around for the recap, then I will say goodbye to you now. Thank you so much for watching. And if you are, then I hope you enjoy it. And in any case, I will see you hopefully next weekend for sock season, and sometime, I guess it would be in the following week for my next regular episode. So take care until then. Bye for now. So, where to start? You know, I didn't think I had taken that many pictures this trip, but as I was downloading and organizing pictures over the weekend, I realized that I had well over 400. And then I added to those with some photos from Cameron's phone and also from the website for the photographer that his company hired to document the trip. But I promise you, I will not show you all of them. In fact, I'm going to try and keep this recap as brief as possible. I'll just go through things kind of chronologically, show you a few highlights, or share a few highlights from each day, and then share a few photos and or videos. The truth is, I could talk about this trip for hours and hours and show you every single picture, but I won't, I promise. So we flew out of Vancouver on January 11th. And as I mentioned, we left just at the right time, right in between two bad weather systems. So we had a layover in Houston, which unfortunately was about 2.5 hours longer than it was supposed to have been. In fact, the same happened coming home. And I think all of us were quite happy when we finally arrived in Buenos Aires, Argentina the following afternoon. The flight was long, the seats were kind of cramped and uncomfortable, and I know neither Cameron nor I slept very well. We were lucky enough to board the cruise ship right away. It was in port that night and in fact did not leave until 1 a.m. the following night. And so the next day we had a full day and evening in Buenos Aires. So this is actually the third time that we'd been on this ship. In 2018, Cameron's company took their 25 and 35-year employees on a Mediterranean cruise on the ship as part of a regular cruise. And then they booked the entire ship the following year for their customer cruise, which was also a Mediterranean cruise. And then they booked this ship again this year for the entire group, which was about 1,000 people in total. So just to reiterate, this is a trip that Cameron's company holds usually about every 2 years. They've been doing these incentive trips since the mid-90s, and customers can earn all or a portion of their trip via a percentage of their purchases over a specified amount of time. And then we were invited to go and act as hosts. So our job was basically to host a table of customers for dinner each evening, or most evenings, and then just to generally act as good ambassadors for the company, mingling with customers and, you know, just schmoozing basically. So the first evening we went to a staff party. They always do that right near the beginning of the trip, bring their whole staff together. There was about 50 between staff members and spouses. And so we had a nice little reception there, got reacquainted, because staff does come from all over British Columbia and even from Alberta, where they've recently opened some stores. So that's always fun to see people again. And then a few of us went and had dinner, and then the rest of the evening was spent getting reacquainted with a whole bunch of customers that either ones that I was meeting for the first time or meeting again, because we've done this trip many times by now, and there's lots of people that I now know and get to see, you know, trip after trip after trip. So that was quite a late night, one of many, but we got up the next morning and did a bicycle tour of Buenos Aires. So Cameron's company gave us a very generous allowance for excursions, and we took full advantage of it. Our philosophy is that if you're going to cruise somewhere, get off the ship and see the different ports as much as you can. I know some people prefer to stay on board and lounge around the pool, and that's fine. Everyone gets to do their own thing, but we really like to get out and see where we are. So that went fine. I was a little bit nervous. I don't ride a bike very often, and I'm always a little bit nervous about it, but it was fine. Their city is set up really well with tons of bike lanes, and we went at a very slow pace. In fact, a little bit too slow. I think everyone would have found it easier to just ride a little bit faster. It's harder to stay on a bike when you're having to go slow. So we went through various areas of the city, including this beautiful treed area where a lot of the embassies are. We stopped at a gorgeous city park, had rose gardens, went to a little museum, and then we also stopped by a monument to Eva Peron. And then we ended the tour at this sort of street corner. There was this huge tree, huge, that had to be propped up in some areas. Its branches were so low and large. And there was a really neat sculpture holding up one of these branches. So then we eventually returned to the ship, and that evening there was a big party. They always kick off their trips with a big party and a concert, and this was no different. So I always find it difficult to describe to people just how over the top these experiences are. So we were all bused to this old warehouse district and got off the bus and entered what looked like sort of a 1920s street scene. There had been actors hired, they were in costumes of that era, and they were sort of acting out little skits, and could get your picture taken with them. They were handing out black and white fedoras for the men, and some of the women wore those too, and then little roses for your hair and fans for the women. And I just happened to wear a red dress. It matched the fan and the rose perfectly. That was just serendipitous, but made for some good pictures. And then in that area, there were servers walking around with trays of drinks and appetizers. There were dancers. It was just so much to take in, and another chance just to reacquaint ourselves with a lot of customers that we hadn't seen for a long time. So we moved from there into, I think, what was an old warehouse that they had a stage set up with some dancers on there. And then like so much food to choose from, all different appetizers. And so we mingled there, had drinks and appetizers before we were all ushered out of there into another building where the concert took place. So the concert this year was the Barenaked Ladies, which is a Canadian band. I'm sure many of you Canadian viewers are familiar with their music, but if you're not, if you watched The Big Bang Theory, apparently they did the theme song for that show. So if you're familiar with that, then you've heard the Barenaked Ladies. So that was a fabulous concert and just a really great way to kick off the trip. So what I didn't realize is Buenos Aires is actually located on a river. It's the Rio de la Plata, I think it's called. Got some notes here, let me see. Yeah, Rio de la Plata. Apparently it's the biggest river in the world. I think the widest, not sure about the longest. And it flows all the way from Buenos Aires to Montevideo, Uruguay. And what we were told by our tour guide in Montevideo. Now, before I left, I heard it was Montevideo, but then our tour guide was calling it Montevideo, so I'm going to go with that. Apparently, it could maybe technically be classed as an estuary, but then as long as they call it a river, then only their citizens can fish it. As soon as it becomes part of the ocean, then I guess it's open to more people. But you definitely can see a difference in the color between that and the Atlantic Ocean, where we eventually did sail along, or sail through, I guess, along the coast. Anyway, that was something I didn't know. So yeah, Montevideo is the next stop. We did a bit of a city tour, and then we headed inland and went to a winery. It was called the Huánuco Winery, where we kind of drove around the winery a little bit, the fields, the vineyards, and then we did a wine tasting. And they had white, red, and rosé wines that we tasted. There's a red wine. I'm not sure if it's just from Uruguay or from that region in general, called a Tanat. And as a mostly non-red wine drinker, actually neither Cameron nor I drink much red wine, mostly white and rosé. It was very good. In fact, we bought a bottle to enjoy on the ship while we were there. And we're going to look for some of these Tanat wines now that we're home. So if you've never tried them, I would highly recommend them. Uruguay was beautiful, and of all the places that we went on our trip, that's one place I could see myself living. The city was really beautiful and clean, and the countryside was gorgeous too. Unfortunately, we were supposed to do a wine tour again the next day, but we were in Punta del Este, Uruguay. Unfortunately, we were all gathered to get on the tender to go to shore when the tenders got shut down because of rough water. And so at first the port authorities weren't letting them run the tenders at all. After that, then they opened them up to be able to bring passengers back from ashore, back to the ship. And then they did, for a brief time, open it up for passengers to be able to go ashore. But by then, our tour had been canceled, unfortunately, and we opted to stay on the ship. And then as it turned out, the weather again picked up, and tenders were shut down for a while again. So, you know, what a tragedy. We had to spend the whole day on the cruise ship. I mean, I would have loved to have gone and seen more of Uruguay. One of the things that they have in Punta del Este, just grabbing my, it's like the newsletter from the ship. They have this really cool sculpture on the beach that looks like a hand sticking up out of the sand. And apparently the city was beautiful. Someone that we spoke to said that it was even more beautiful than Montevideo. So I'm really sad to have missed it. But that's just the way it was. So that evening we had an 80s glow party. And so I think I had mentioned before I went away that Cameron and I needed to get costumes for this party. So I'll put in a couple pictures of what we wore. The whole pool deck of the ship was all decorated up with neon lights and stuff. There were these cool glasses that had like flashing light bulb or ice cubes in them, like neon colors, and it was just a hoot to see everybody dressed up. That was super fun. And then we headed upstairs to the lounge after, where they had a band playing 80s music. So yeah, lots and lots of fun for that evening. And then we were able to sleep in the next day because we had an actual day at sea, scheduled day at sea. And so that was a good time to kind of catch up on sleep, and went and sat out on the pool deck in the afternoon and chatted to a bunch of people. For a while I was alternating between reading my book and napping, and it was just a great day of rest. Because the next day we were in port again. Now, when we were choosing our excursions, Cameron and I had chosen one that was a cable car to the top of this mountain and then a zip line down. Now, I did a zip line in the Dominican Republic, and I sort of decided at that point that it was okay, but I didn't ever have to do a zip line again. That satisfied my desire for it. However, I knew Cameron wanted to do this, so I had agreed to do this excursion. And then when we got all of our tickets and everything before we left, we learned that it had been sold out, and so we weren't able to go on it. And that did not break my heart. I was glad that it was out of my control. I hadn't said, no, I'm not going to go. I'm glad it was out of my control that this tour wasn't happening for us. However, this one couple that are customers that we hung out with quite a bit, they had gotten tickets for that excursion, and the wife was a bit concerned because she has been having rotator cuff issues, and she wasn't sure how it would be for her shoulder. And then I also learned later she didn't want to really do it either, but she was doing it for her husband. So he had asked Cameron that if she decided not to go, if he would like to go with him. And so that's exactly what happened. So we all went ashore together, and then she and I took the cable car up the mountain, walked around. They have beautiful views from up there. And then we took the cable car back down and went back to the ship for the afternoon. And then we all met for happy hour that evening. Meanwhile, Cameron and he went and did the cable car, walked around, did the zip line thing down, and it wasn't like from station to station to station. It was like you're at the top of the mountain and you zip line all the way down. Oh. Agora. And then came down to a beach where they got onto kind of this pirate ship thing, and it took them back to the ship. So they did what they wanted to do. We did what we wanted to do. We both enjoyed the port, or we all enjoyed the port very much, but on our own terms. And it turned out, like, for Cameron's, especially, like their group, like it was a lot of hurry up and wait. We had quite a long lineup going up in the cable, or waiting to go up in the cable car. And we figured that because they were on an excursion that they would bypass that lineup and get to go right up, but that wasn't the case. And then once they were at the top, they had to wait a long time for the zip line. And it was very hot and very humid. So we felt like we got the better end of the deal, but they got their thrills and they were happy to have done that. So it worked out well for everyone. The next day, and that was our first stop in Brazil. And this port was called Balneário Camboriú. And apparently they were just referring to it as BC. The next day we were in Santos, Brazil, which is not very far from Sao Paulo. And it's a very large port city. And we had booked like a city tour. So our first stop was the old coffee exchange. Obviously, coffee is a huge part of Brazil's economy and history. And a beautiful old building, which was once the coffee exchange, is now a museum about coffee and about the exchange. And so we went through there. And then we were driven to a funicular railway that went up the hill to what had been a casino back in the 20s, I think. And their upper deck gave just this amazing view of the city all around. There's also an old chapel up on the hill that we walked through. And then we stopped by a soccer stadium on the way back to the ship, where Pele used to play. So there's a whole sort of museum area devoted to him and all of the championships that the team had won and all that. So that was an interesting spot to see. And then as we were driving back to the ship, we drove along their incredible beaches. What's super interesting and super scary is that a ton of buildings right along the beach area are all crooked. And our tour guide didn't explain why, but I looked it up once I got home. And I guess there were more lax building codes when these buildings were put up. And for the type of soil they have there, which is very soft, the foundations did not go deep enough. And so I'll put a link to this little article about it. And some of these buildings, they're out as much as a meter or half a meter to 1.5 meters. So we're talking 20 inches to 60 inches out. Like, you can see these buildings are visibly leaning. It's a wonder that people still live in them. I mean, they're tall. These are high-rise condos and things. Very, very interesting. Very sketchy. So the next day we were in Búzios, Brazil, where we had booked a beach day. So we just had a few hours at this beautiful beach area. Thankfully had good coverage. I am very pale, as you can see, and I'm always worried about getting too much sun, but I was able to hide under the umbrella most of the time, although I did take a dip in the water. It was cooler than we expected, more like the water here at home in the summer than, we were expecting much warmer, much more tropical water. The next day we did a sail and snorkel in Ilha Grande or Ilha Grande. I'm not sure how you say that. I speak neither Spanish nor Portuguese, so probably some of my pronunciation is not spot on. So yeah, a boat came and picked our group up from the ship, right from the ship, and we sailed along this beautiful island, had a little bit of time to go snorkeling in one spot. I love to snorkel. I did not enjoy this time. We were I put my mask on, and it usually takes me a minute to kind of calm down and realize, yes, you can breathe, etc., etc. But my mouth kept filling up with salt water, and I just never got comfortable. So I snorkeled long enough to sort of see the fish that were under the water, and there wasn't a huge variety. We've done snorkeling in other places where we've seen tons and tons of different colorful fish. So I got enough to get a taste of it. And then I just got rid of the snorkel, and I just floated around in the water while Cameron snorkeled. And I enjoyed that just as much. And then on our way back to the ship, we stopped at another beach area and just had time to walk around and admire that. So that was a lovely, relaxing day. And then the final day of the final stop of the cruise was Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And we had booked a Jeep tour there. It took us to the Tijuca Rainforest. It's a national park, I think. And that was really cool. We were in the back of this open Jeep. So again, worried about the sun. I'm glad I had brought a hooded, like a very light hoodie, which I end up putting on and just protecting myself from the sun. That and hat and stuff. Sunscreen, of course, that goes without saying. So we had to drive all the way through the city to go to this park, and we got out at one part to see this beautiful waterfall, and then we drove on a little further and got out by this little chapel, and then did a walk through the, I guess it's jungle, through the rainforest, I guess. If you've ever seen pictures or footage of like the rainforest in Brazil, you'll see those big blue butterflies. We saw a bunch of them. Unfortunately, they just keep going. None of them stopped long enough for me to get a picture. That was just so cool to see those huge blue butterflies. And that's where I got my insect bite. I looked down at one point, and it wasn't just like a sting, like I got a few mosquito bites. This was something took a chunk out of my ankle. It was like an open wound to start with. No idea what. It's all back to normal now. But man, it sure made my ankle and foot swell up quite a bit and was itchy for the first few days. But yeah, great tour. Then we came back through the city again, and this time we went on a little bit of a city tour. So we were able to see the Christ the Redeemer statue from quite a distance. And then the other famous thing in the area is Sugarloaf Mountain, and there's a cable car that goes between it and another nearby mountain. And so we got a good look at that. And then that night was the farewell party. And again, I cannot describe just how over the top this was. It was held right at the port. So we didn't have to be transferred anywhere. So they waited till they were all ready to let everyone off the ship. And we had, in our room, we were given a paper bag full of sort of costume things. I meant to grab it. So you'll see in the pictures, I had a headband with a feather. I have to tell you something funny about that headband. So you'll notice that I'm wearing it kind of draped over this way, because that's how it came. And one of the customers that we were sitting with that night also had one just like it. It was even red, same color. And she sent us a picture when she got home, and her daughter put it on, and it only took her like 3 seconds to figure out that actually that feather was supposed to like go up, which made perfect sense, because if we looked at all the other headdresses that people were wearing, the feather went like straight up. But neither of us clued in, and we wore it kind of like this over our head. Actually, I think it looked better that way. I think it'll look weird being on one side sticking up, but whatever. And then our paper bag had a hat for Cameron to wear, and then it had sort of like, looked like Christmas tinsel, kind of like boa kind of things. I put that on, and then had sparkles to stick like around your eyes. And so that was kind of fun. And then like a couple little noisemakers, like little tambourine things. So we came off the ship, and there was music going, and all of these carnival costumed people. And so we walked along the pier into where the party was being held. Got a picture taken with some of these people. And then there was performance after performance of a lot of singers and dancers. Oh, I'll be right back. Sorry for the interruption. I know I could just let it ring, but I can't stand listening to it, and I'm always worried I'm going to miss an important phone call. In any case, it gave me a chance to warm up my tea and to grab the headdress that I was talking about. So this is how it came. And in retrospect, I think we were meant to straighten out the feather and wear it like this. There were other more elaborate headdresses that had feathers that stuck up, but they were like from the center, where this kind of looks weird off to one side, in my opinion. So if I were to ever wear this again for some reason, I probably would wear it like this again. And here's the jewels I had on around my eyes. They're just stick-on, but by the end of the evening, they were starting to slide because I was getting really sweaty. So I just kind of took them off and tucked them into a napkin because I wanted to hold on to them in case I ever have a reason to wear them again. It was really fun getting dressed up like that. And I wish I could describe to you all the sights and sounds. The music was just so captivating, and the color. When I look at all the thumbnails for the pictures I took that night, it's just color. This was just a small taste of what Carnival is like. I cannot even imagine the whole city full of all that music and color. It must just be amazing. So after all the different performances, a DJ came on, played some dance music, so a lot of people, including us, got up and danced, and it was just a really fun way to end the trip. So the next day, we were not flying out until 10 p.m. and there were a number of other late departures. So they arranged a tour and a lunch for us. And so once we got off the ship, we boarded a bus and they took us around to see some of the sights, including a couple of different beaches. One of these was Copacabana, which is very well known. And you can see the very distinctive wave-patterned mosaic sidewalk that runs all along it. It was quite something. We had a lunch at like a Brazilian restaurant. Okay, I know we were in Brazil, but I mean it was like a Brazilian restaurant, the kind where you have like salads and then meat, and more meat. So waiters would come around to your table with different types of meat and slice off portions for you. It was very delicious, but very filling. And then we had a little bit of time to wander around the grounds around there. It was right across from Sugarloaf Mountain, and so we got some good sights of the cable cars going between the two mountaintops. There was a little pond right there, and there were turned out to be 3 herons in it. You could see one right away, and then after a while you realized there were 2 other smaller ones hidden in the reeds there. It was quite something. And then they took us to a marketplace. So we had 2 hours to kind of spend there. 1 hour was plenty to walk around. It was very hot. So for the second hour, several couples and us found a bar and sat down and had a cold drink before it was time to board the bus and go back to the airport, or go to the airport, I should say. The Rio de Janeiro airport was very busy, very confusing, lots of lineups, but we finally got on our flight, and wonder of wonders, I actually slept for a while. I made myself stay awake because I wanted to see our departure and see Rio from the air. But because it was raining, it wasn't very long before we were into the clouds, and it was just, all blocked from view anyway. But I went right to sleep, and apparently Cameron had tea, and then he had dinner, and I didn't hear any of it. I was zonked for about 3 hours, so that was great. And then I dozed the rest of that flight. So by the time I got home, I wasn't too jet lagged. Although, as I mentioned earlier, I did go to bed early and have a really good night's sleep when I got home. So I think that's all the highlights. I know this was not a short recap by any stretch, but we did lots and we saw lots, and we just had a fabulous time. So I hope you enjoyed that, if you stuck through for all of it. So once again, thank you for watching this episode. Thank you as always for all your kind comments and contribution to the Ravelry group conversation there, taking part in the make-alongs, etc., YouTube comments, all of that. Really appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you again very soon. Bye for now.